If you have ever been told that you need to get out of your own way, then this video is for you. I'm going to tell you why it happens, how to recognize that you're in that zone, and what to do about it. I'm Missy Hughes, and I'm a productivity coach, and I help you get things done. Go to the link in the comments or the description and sign up for my weekly tips to get for practical ways to feel accomplished and proud of what you're getting done each day. So, why does this happen? Why do we get in our own way? Why are we our own obstacles in what we actually decide we want to achieve in our lives? Well, whenever we're trying something new, and I want to just go right out of the gate. And sometimes we're not always in a brand new thing when we're in a skill that we don't know yet. So even if you've been trying this new skill for 2, 5, 10 years, if it's a skill you haven't mastered yet, it still might be kind of new for you. But whenever we're in something new, we have to build the repetitions to build the strength, to build the skill in that thing. And before we do, we're kind of weak. We're kind of shaky. We don't really know. We don't have the experience to know what we're up against, how to do it, how to make it look perfect and great. So that can be kind of a scary zone. So what happens, I mean, this starts in infancy. When we're trying something new, we are shaky. It goes with the baby learns how to lift its head and then roll over and then crawl and then walk. And all of these things look like a disaster in the beginning because this infant literally does not have the muscle memory or the strength to do the action. So with every little repetition, they're getting a little bit stronger. Oh, I did this before. 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 And you get a little bit of progress each time. Now, the interesting thing for an infant is they don't really need a lot of motivation to do these kind of things. They get the instant gratification of when I lift my head, I get the win of getting to see more in the horizon. When I turn over, I get access to more. I get a different perspective. When I start to crawl, I get to actually achieve more and put more junk in my mouth. But the reward is in the experience. The motivation it's kind of a moot point because it's also thrilling with each iteration. But as soon as that infant gets comfortable and proficient, they're immediately trying for the next goal. They're immediately moving themselves forward. Now, at some point, things start to change. That infant thinks that everything is them. So, the parent is also just an extension of them. It's the feeding them, the clothing, the nurturing. You know, at some point we start to separate ourselves as individual things and other individual things. And when that starts to happen, we understand ourselves as part of a group. When we start to understand ourselves as part of a group, we start to sort of figure out how we fit into the other part of the group. We start looking to other members of the group for validation. We start wondering if we're okay in the group in different little ways. And then we don't have to get into like all the science of childhood development, but that is important because we start needing to have a stronger need to move forward. Now, all of a sudden, when we're looking at the validation of ourselves in the group, there's a higher risk for being weak in a skill. There's a higher risk for being a little shaky because we start to think, oh, I'm not okay. If I'm not strong in something, then that puts me down in the group, or I'm not accepted by the group, or it's not okay in some way. And so why do we get in our own way? Well, we start to think that when we're in this beginner stage, that we're not okay. So we have this conflict. We want to go forward in this thing, yet we don't have confidence that we're okay going forward, building strength. We have this conflict that we're not okay in the beginning stage. We have this conflict that we're not okay if we're weak in a skill. And I want to use this terminology a lot. Weak in a skill. You're not weak as a person. You're weak in the skill that you're building when you're learning something new. It just means you're learning something. It just means if I've never done a bicep curl, I can't curl a 30-pound dumbbell. I can't. I'm going to start with maybe 1 or 5 and build up to 8 or 10. And then, depending on how often I do this repetition, determines how strong I get in that skill. Doesn't mean anything about me. I might be this amazing person who can't do a bicep curl. Who cares, right? In a lot of circumstances, it doesn't matter if I don't have a whole host of skills, because I have a whole host of other skills, right? So our skills don't actually determine our worth as part of the group or our worth as an individual, but we think it does. We have this is where we start to get in our own way. We start to think that our skills in life determine how good we are in life, which is not the case. It just means I'm good at this part or I'm not good at that part. I can just practice and get better at that part. So it doesn't seem as easy when we make it mean the whole of us instead of a skill that we're developing. So when you stop thinking about that, when you think about that shaky part of learning something new as making you a little bit less, you start thinking that that shaky part of learning something new is wrong. You start thinking that shaky, being weak in something is bad. And so if something's wrong, if something's bad, then you're like, oh, I don't want to go that way. Don't go that way. But you're like, oh, but I want to go that way. But there's this other part of you that says, don't. It's not safe to go that way, because then you show that you're not so good at it. Then you show that you're a weak link. And we hate that in a group. We hate being the weak link, right? So the conflict is why we get in our own way. It's this part where we make it bad or wrong to not be good at a skill. And we make it mean that we're not good in life. So how do you recognize it? When you find yourself second guessing yourself all the time, and it's not it's sort of a mean way, when you're like, I'm going to try this new thing. And then there's this voice in your head that's like, I don't think that's a good idea. You're probably going to mess that up. That's pretty broad. It's kind of mean, and it sort of stops you, right? That's not going to work out so well. If somebody were to tell me that, I'd be like, I wouldn't immediately say, well, that's just your opinion. I'm not going to take that opinion. I'm going forward. I would instead be like, oh, why isn't it a good idea? What do I need to know that I don't know? You probably know more than I do. And we're listening. Keep in mind, we're listening to our own brains. So your own brain is saying that's not a good idea. But we're listening. We're all in. We're like, oh, okay, I trust you. But it's the part of you that wants you to not die. It doesn't care if you grow. It just wants you to not die. The part of you that wants to keep you safe, your survival brain, will always tell you don't try new things because they could be dangerous. So that part of you is not so nice all the time. It's like, whatever I need to do to shut this person down, that's what I'm going to do. And so it's like, oh, you're going to fail. Don't do that. So when you second guess yourself, that's one sign. When you lean heavily on others and trust them instead of you. So I want to make a clarification. It's great to have a mentor and to let them help you along the way. Oh, this person did this. Let me try it. It worked well for them. Let me see how that goes. I'm going to put myself in the experience to build the repetition, to build the strength for me, and use that person as an example. That's a great thing to do. Great idea. However, when you're like, I don't know what to do, this person's got to tell me what to do. But really, I just want to be in their presence while they do it, and I'm not going to do it at all. When you start looking to someone else to answer your own questions and say, instead of saying, I think this, what do you think? Where are the holes in that? What am I missing? When you look to yourself first, you have that confidence. You start to build your own confidence that you're okay when you're a little shaky. But when you lean on somebody else, like, oh, I can't stand on my own 2 feet. I don't know how to do it without your help. You're the one that's getting me through this. Then you might be getting in your own way. You might be leaning too heavily on them and not giving yourself the space to build your own strength. The third way you can sort of recognize maybe I'm getting in my own way is if you never feel proud of what you've done. So if you're always like, oh, that was garbage, and you go to the worst case scenario, that was terrible. That was a complete failure. I've been there a million times before. I bet you have too. Where you finish doing something challenging and you're like, oh, horrible, period. Like that's the end of the story and that's all there is to be said about it. Instead of evaluating what went well about that. Okay. What didn't go well about that? Okay. I have something to learn in this area and I can repeat this thing. If it went well, I can repeat it. If it didn't go well, I can learn something from it and I can see what I would do differently. So when you go to judgment, broad, critical, kind of mean, that was terrible, you're probably getting in your own way because that's going to hold you back. That's going to stop you instead of evaluating where you can sort of say, okay, what's good, what's not? How can I learn? What am I going to try next time? And you're already looking forward to next time. When you're judging, kind of critical, getting in your own way, you're not looking to next time. You're looking to never repeat that experience again. Right? So, second guessing yourself, leaning heavily on someone else as the only way to get you through, and never feeling proud, never looking at your accomplishments, using judgment instead of evaluation. Those are 3 ways that you know that you're getting in your own way. So what do you do about that? The first thing to do is to acknowledge that you are a beginner. Acknowledge that you are on your way of learning a skill, not that you should be perfect about it because you have a vision that you want to go somewhere. So I want to go back to something I said earlier. You may have been doing something for a long time and you're still getting in your own way. If you keep stopping yourself, you don't actually ever grow in the process. So you may be a novice even though you've been in it for a while. A beginner doesn't mean the first time you tried. It also might mean if you try and stop, try and stop, try and stop. You try the same thing and stop, try the same thing and stop. So if you think about like tennis, for instance, I don't know if any of you are into tennis, but there's a rating. If you sign up for USTA, there's a rating scale. And when you start, no matter how long you've played tennis, if you have these sort of skills, you're in this section. If you can do a couple more things, then you get to this section. Then you start owning a little bit of the court in different ways, then you move up a section, right? And based on where you are in your skills, doesn't matter how long you've been out there on the court, then you get to move up the ladder. So some of us are never going to be that person that's the way down here on this end of the spectrum, and that's okay in tennis, right? But we don't think that that's okay in all the other skills we're developing in our lives. We think that we need to be a 4 or 5 tennis player as soon as we get on the court. We need to be the most expert. We need to be headed out on to being paid to play. We think that we should be an expert as soon as we start because we think that it's wrong to be shaky. So the first thing to do when you acknowledge that you're a beginner is you stop making it wrong to be shaky. It's not wrong that you're weak in a skill. So it doesn't have to mean that you're weak in your character. It does not mean that at all. When you're building a skill, you're going to be weak. As you build your repetitions, as you practice the skill, you will get stronger. Your character is the same whether you're weak in the skill or strong in the skill. That doesn't have anything to do with you practicing. So you can be solid in who you are, even though you are shaky in a skill. So number one, to get out of your own way is stop making it wrong to be shaky. Stop making it wrong to be in a learning phase. So when you're shaky, it's not a no. You can eliminate that conflict. When you're shaky, you're learning. So you can practice a thought like, I'm figuring it out. I'm figuring out how to learn how to do the skill, how to practice the skill, how to do it, how to get better at it. I'm figuring it out. Doesn't mean you're perfect yet. You're figuring it out. So step one, make it okay to be weak in the skill. Acknowledge that you're a novice. Number two, set a clear goal to get half a step better. Not 5 steps better, not great leaps. We're not looking for quantum leaps in progress. We're looking for half a step better, half a step better, half a step better. So the way you do that is you say, okay, I'm starting right here. In this skill, I'm starting right here. What it will look like to get just a little bit better, just half a step, not even a whole step, just a little bit better, it'll look like this. So I will know that I'm half a step better when this happens. So an example of that might be if I'm practicing, if I've never spoken in front of a crowd before. Me getting in front of a crowd the first time might look like freezing and saying nothing. That would be step one. That's totally shaky. That's having zero expertise in the skill. And some might call it a failure. I might call it step one. So half a step better is being able to stand on the stage and introduce myself. Then I stand on the stage, I introduce myself, and I blurt through what I want to say. Then I stand on the stage, I introduce myself, and I say everything I want to say very quickly. And then I say what I want to say just a little bit more slowly. Maybe I tell a story. You see where I'm going. I'm building the skill one little bit at a time. It might take me years to be engaging to a crowd. I'm still making progress. I have clear objectives of what I want to accomplish that will get me just a little bit better. So that's step two. Knowing what your step is and making it small. Step three is going to reiterate that. Let your vision be huge and your action steps be tiny. So when you make a decision of what is my next step, I want you to be able to know exactly what it is. And when you start to go after it, you aren't overwhelmed. You're like, oh, I can do that. I just haven't done it before. Oh, I can do that. Maybe I've done it before in a different scenario. I can bring that to this new skill and practice it again. So when you're deciding what to do, your vision can be like, oh, I'm going again in this public speaking example. I'm going from speaking to my dog to speaking to 5,000 people, right? I'm not going to immediately go to these 5,000 people. I mean, where are they even going to come from, right? But the step of I can speak to my dog and then I'll speak to my child who can actually tell me what he thinks. Then I'll speak to my spouse that can really give opinions and feedback and pointers. Then I'll speak to maybe a couple of people that can just increase the intensity. Then I'll speak to more and on and on and on. Every step is doable. I know exactly the steps I can take to make it happen. It's clear, it's tiny. Because when you're overwhelmed, you stop, you get in your own way, you make it wrong to not be okay. When you're overwhelmed, you stop. But when it's tiny, you're like, oh, I can do that. Then you go do it. Oh, I can do that. Then you go do it. Oh, I can do that. And you keep moving pit and pat on down the road. So, what all of these do, acknowledging that you're a beginner and making it okay to be shaky, setting a clear goal of just getting half a step better, and making your vision big, but your action plan small, all of these things eliminate the conflict. They eliminate that I'm wrong when. And it starts to set the expectation that I'm going to be a little shaky. I'm going to figure it out. I don't have to be perfect and I don't have to learn in these leaps and bounds. I'm going to just pit and pat on down the road. You start to focus on being in the journey instead of at the end. When I think I'm going to leap from the beginning right to the end, I am overwhelmed. I am in my own way. I'm figuring out all the ways it's not going to work. When I'm creating these little incremental ways to get forward, then I think it's doable the whole time. I just haven't done it yet. So then I just set about doing it. And then I see that new little horizon and I'm like, oh, I like that. And I see that new horizon. Oh, I like that too. And then I see that new horizon and I keep going forward, just like that infant learning how to lift their head and then walk down the road. So, getting in your way, just to recap, is your brain keeping you safe? It's saying, don't be a novice. That'll make you weak in your group. You're not weak. You're just learning a new skill. So, to get out of your way means you get on with your journey. So, as a productivity coach, what I can help you do is look at what your individual obstacles are. How are you getting in your own way? What are the thoughts that are holding you back? How does that affect the actions that you're taking? We can go from frozen to all the little pits and pats to get you on down the road. So I look forward to working with you more and to seeing you next week.